Hello, this is Matthew with Simplilearn, and today we're going to talk about how you can take MySQL, a very popular open source database, and Node.js, a very popular architecture for building up web applications, and pull the two of them together and why you'd want to do that. So let's jump in. So first of all, let's cover why you'd want to go through this tutorial. So we're going to cover what MySQL is. We're also going to tell you how we're going to connect with Node.js and why you'd want to do that with MySQL. And then finally, we're going to do a demo taking you through all the steps on how you can actually do that kind of connection. So what is MySQL? Well, basically, MySQL is probably the world's most popular relational database. So if you think of relational databases that are table-driven, MySQL is arguably the most popular database out there for RDBMS systems. It is by far the most popular open source relational database. The entire database is written in C and C++. It's been around for a really long time. Again, it's open source, which is great, which means that there are no licenses or costs for actually using MySQL. And you'll find that companies of all sizes, from small mom and pop shops all the way up to massive global enterprises, are all using MySQL. So, why would you want to then take that next step of connecting Node.js with MySQL? Well, fundamentally, it comes down to the basics of the differences between the two products. MySQL is a database, and Node.js is a architecture framework for building out web applications. Again, with MySQL, it's open source. It's free to use. You don't have to pay anything. There are no licenses, which, if you compare it with other solutions out there, is a big deal. MySQL, even though it is open source, is incredibly powerful. It's one of the more mature open source programs out there. I think Apache is probably arguably more, Apache web server is probably more mature, but MySQL is very close behind it. So it has had a huge amount of investment. This is not a solution that's only a couple of years old. We're talking about a solution that's more than 15 years old, very, very structured, very powerful, and you can do a lot of really good things with it. You can actually then build solutions with it using PHP, Java, really any kind of database, even other systems and other frameworks will allow you to interact with MySQL. And it just allows you to work with just huge amounts of data very, very quickly. So let's go through a demo of how you'd actually use Node.js and MySQL.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started by putting our Node environment together. So let's start by selecting Node.js and downloading it. So we'll go to nodejs.org. And there you have your options for Windows, Mac, or if you want to go for the source code, you can go ahead and download and install that. The next is to install XAMPP. So we're going to go to XAMPP installers for a quick search, and that's on our apachefriends.org site. And here we have XAMPP available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X. And then finally, we want to go ahead and install Visual Studio. So Visual Studio is going to be our IDE, our integrated development environment. In this instance, we're going to use Visual Studio Code. If you don't use Visual Studio Code, it's a great free open source solution for being able to build applications. I'm a big fan of it, so I encourage you to use it. Go ahead and download, install that. And we have Visual Studio code up and running. So go ahead and we're going to open up a new folder. And let's go ahead and create a new folder. We'll just put it straight off our desktop here. And it's just for kicks and giggles. So we're just going to type in Node MySQL for our source code. And we'll open up that folder and select that. And so we now have this folder selected in our Visual Studio Code editor. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of the welcome page. We don't really need that anymore. And we're going to terminal window so we can actually see the scripts that we're writing. We're going to be using terminal quite a bit in this. So for instance, we're just going to test that we have npm installed. We do, so that's great. And we're going to go npm init, and that's actually going to set up our own node package module. And we can actually see that the JSON file for that package has been created. So we go in there, we can see that all the defaults are selected. You'll see that index.js is the default file that will be created. So we're actually going to go ahead and we're actually going to create our own index.js file, and we're going to add in some instructions into that file to actually install the correct software from the npm package. And the first thing we want to do is install Express, which is a package that's great for building lightweight web applications, not mobile applications. I suppose if you're doing a responsive design, then I guess it would be mobile. But in this, it's a web application environment. So we're going to put in the requirements for that, and then we're going to also go and require that MySQL gets installed. And you'll see that for both of them, we're just going to use npm's default commands for creating that, and we'll go down to the terminal window and we'll do npm install, and it's going to install the Express and MySQL environment. And as that installs, you'll actually see on the left-hand side under the folder, you'll actually see the files starting to be installed. So for instance, we have the node modules, and underneath that will be all the subsequent files that we need. And there we are. Everything is installed. All right, so let's just go ahead and validate some of these commands to make sure everything is installed. So we're going to open up XAMPP, which allows us to go in and view and see that everything's installed. So we have MySQL installed, we have Apache installed. We can start and stop the services with XAMPP. Go ahead and do that. You can do this through terminal window as well, but the UI interface is really nice. So let's go into my SQL interface, and you'll see that we don't have any databases. These are all just the standard test databases, and so we have to go ahead and create one. And so let's get our SQL database connection created. So we're going to write const db equals MySQL create connection, and we want to connect to the local host in this instance, and user is just going to be a root user account, which is the standard user account that comes from MySQL. There is no password for the root user when you're running it locally, but I encourage you to change that as quickly as you can, because you don't really want to have a password-free environment. And now we want to be able to then connect to the MySQL environment. So we'll write db.connect, parentheses error, and we want to throw an error message if the connection isn't good. So if we do error, we'll throw the error message to the log window. And if we don't, then we'll write MySQL connected. All right. And then we want to connect that to our Express app. The next step we want to do after we made our connection is to go ahead and create a database. So we're going to do both steps at the same one. So we're running the script right now, and then we'll run the commands in the terminal window so we can actually create the database. And so we're going to go ahead and we want to create a database. And let's write let SQL equals create database, and we're going to call the database Node MySQL. You can call it whatever you want, but this is just a Node MySQL script. The db query SQL error. Throw error message. Res.send. Database created. So we'll throw a message saying that the database has been created. Let's go save that to demonstrate that we've connected and we've created a database. So let's go ahead and we'll do node index.js to run that, and we've connected to MySQL. That's great. Good first step. And then we'll go to the window and we'll go to localhost 3000, which is the default connection. But what you'll see is that we've actually created the name of the database has been changed to Node MySQL. So we've got an error message, which we expected. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to say we want to listen. And if the error message comes up to 3000, then in the console window, we want to put a message of server started on port 3000. So let's try that again. Node index.js. Yep, and server has started on port 3000. We'll refresh that. Nope, still getting an error message. And what we want to see is, let's go ahead and see our database hasn't been created. So let's go and connect to database. The database is, let's go ahead and click create DB on port 3000. All right, so by doing that, we write that command and that function, and that goes ahead and creates our database. And we'll actually see that we have now Node MySQL has been created, which is a great first start. Now we have to go in and create some tables because we have no tables in there. All right, so let's go down and let's go ahead and create a table. So what you're seeing right now is that we're using the index.js environment within a package on Node.js to actually create and control everything that we want to see in our windows. So all of the work that we're doing for creating a table, for creating the database, for initializing the core files, is all being done through JS. And so here we are, we're going to create a new table. We call it it's going to be called the employee table. And so once we run the command create employee, it's going to create a table, has the employee fields, which is going to have an ID, which will be an integer that will go into auto increment. It'll have a name field. We'll also put in a designation field. And we'll have a primary key as well. Keep it very simple for right now. And let's just put our DB connection so that everything connects effectively. Okay, so if everything goes correctly, then we'll have the message employee table created. So let's test this out. And node.index.js. Make sure that the data we have now actually a database field that we can connect to. So we've got Node MySQL, so we're connecting to the correct correct database. Obviously, we get an error. And then we'll try that again. Yay, we connected to the database. So the database has the name. And because we've got Node MySQL, there's no fields in there yet. So let's go ahead and put in create employee for the fields, and let's run the function that creates the new table. And then voila, we have a new table. And so the next action we want to do is actually populate the table with a record. So this starts becoming familiar. So we're now going to put in a single record. We'll call it employee 1 for right now. And we'll write the function employee 1, and when we run that function, it'll actually go ahead and it'll actually insert the record into MySQL. And the name will be Jake Smith, and the designation will be a Chief Executive Officer. Certainly encourage you to put your own name into this, make yourself your own CEO, because why not? And we're going to make this as an insert record. We're going to insert into the employee table. And we're just using some basic SQL scripting here. And what you'll see actually with Visual Studio Code is that it's actually providing a lot of prompts to make it easier to write your code. Microsoft is looking to actually add some AI to Visual Studio Code to actually start auto-completing scripts, which will make it even easier to write your code. All right, so let's go run node index.js. You see we've got everything connected, and we'll grab the function employee1, and let's go over to our Express site. And let's just go and we'll insert the command employee1. Employee has been added, and we will just validate this by going back to MySQL, and we'll refresh it. And you'll see, if we click on the employee table, we should now have an employee in there. Yep, there we do. Jake Smith. Well done, Jake. First record. All right, so we want to be able to now select the employee. So let's go ahead and do that. And we want to be able to easily get the employee list. So let's use our SQL command, and we'll do select star, which is everything from the employee table. So we're actually pulling everything from the employee table. We're going to query the database. Let's throw a message to confirm that the query is successful. We'll put everything in the console log results. All right, let's give this a whirl. Okay, so let's go and run our command. We'll localhost 3000. And we put get employee. And it says employee details fetched. Now we go to the console window in Visual Studio. Yep, there we go. We have now all the packet information, including the ID about Jake Smith. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can actually update the employee information. So as you can see, now we're starting to run into just our standard SQL commands. And so we want to be able to update the employee from a browser. And as you can tell, we're not using any forms or any other types of records. We're just simply interacting between the browser, the server, and the database. And the new name will be updated name. And we have to make sure we're updating the appropriate record. And we want to make sure that we're matching against ID 1. Right, so let's run that again. And Jake Smith is there. Now go and select Jake employee :/1. We've now gone ahead and updated the Jake Smith information. So let's click on employee table, and we now see it says updated name. I know, not very creative, but it allows you to see a change. And finally, we can go ahead and delete the record as well. So it's going to be similar to update, but deleting instead. And we're going to delete the record from the employee table, where name equals, where ID equals, and ID. And then we want to be able to show that the record has been deleted. Yeah. Just like delete employee deleted, and we go to database. We can actually see from the employee table that there are no entries. The one and only record that was there has been deleted. And so this shows you how you can very easily control everything from using your connection into MySQL right from Node Package Manager. You can create a table, you can select your records, you can then update any record that you selected, and finally, you can delete any record that you want to be able to delete.
So I hope you got some great information out of that presentation. We went through and showed you how Node.js and MySQL can work with each other, why it's of benefit for you to use that. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, get the notify bell turned on so you'll be notified about new videos from Simplilearn as they are published. If you have any questions on how to interact between Node.js and MySQL, please stick those in the comments below. We read them on a very regular basis and we'll always get back to you with answers to any of the questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.